stillness of a quiet night on October 22nd, 2024, a single shot rang out, shattering the peace of a Tallahassee neighborhood. A young mother, only few months away from welcoming a new life into the world, had been tragically shot in her own kitchen. Mya Johnson, a 26-year-old mother of two, was fatally struck in an incident that began as an argument, but would soon unravel into something far more complex than anyone could have imagined. What seemed at first like a tragic accident began to raise more questions than answers. Her boyfriend, Jha'kari Martin-Sugrin, claimed it was a misunderstanding, a moment of panic that led to the fatal shot. But as investigators dug deeper into the circumstances of that night, inconsistencies began to surface, casting doubt on Jha'kari's version of events. Was this truly an accident, or was there something darker beneath the surface? Mya Johnson was more than just a mother. She was the kind of woman who believed in second chances. At just 26 years old, she was raising two young children with a third on the way. Despite facing the challenges of motherhood, Mya's love for her children knew no bounds. She was a woman who worked tirelessly, balancing her role as a mother with her career. Her days were spent managing the ups and downs of motherhood while also striving for more. She wasn't just a stay-at-home mom. Mya had aspirations. She dreamed of creating a better future for her family, one where they would never have to struggle the way she had. Mya's Instagram profile painted a picture of someone who wore many hats. She was a traveling lash tech, a businesswoman, and also ran a side hustle selling men's clothing. Through her hustle, she showed her children the importance of hard work, independence, and pursuing dreams no matter the obstacles. But Mya's life was not without its challenges. As much as she tried to create a stable, loving environment for her children, her relationship with her boyfriend, Jha'kari Martin-Sugrin, was complicated. They had been together for years, and their relationship was full of ups and downs. There were moments of love, of joy, of hope for a better tomorrow. But there were also moments of tension, conflict, and arguments. Neighbors had heard the shouting arguments that were often heated and full of frustration. The emotional distance between the two had grown over time, and many around them began to worry about Mya's safety. Have you ever witnessed a relationship that seemed full of potential but was weighed down by conflict? What do you think it takes for someone to decide to stay in a relationship despite those signs of tension? Share your thoughts in the comment section. Jha'kari and Mya's relationship was one marked by cycles of reconciliation and conflict. There were good times, sure, but those good times seemed to be overshadowed by the unresolved issues between them. People who knew Mya closely say she believed in second chances, that if they worked at it, things could get better. But the tension was always there, simmering just beneath the surface. Friends and family began to notice how the dynamics between the two seemed increasingly strained. Could Mya have seen the red flags earlier? Do you think she stayed in the relationship because of hope for change or fear of what leaving might bring? In her heart, Mya believed that if she worked hard enough, both for herself and for her children, she could build the life she dreamed of, a life that wasn't defined by the struggles of her past. She spoke often of wanting to go back to school, to create a future where her children could look up to her, not just as a mother, but as an inspiration. Mya wanted to show them that they could achieve anything, even if life had been difficult. It was these dreams that drove her to keep pushing forward, despite the emotional weight she carried from her relationship. Doesn't it often feel like the people we love are the ones we try the hardest for, even when it means sacrificing our own peace? What kind of future do you think Mya wanted for herself and her children? But as the days went on, those dreams seemed to grow further out of reach. Despite her best efforts, Mya found herself stuck in a relationship where love and hope were increasingly replaced by doubt, control, and fear. She had always tried to protect her children from the realities of her turbulent relationship, but it became harder as the cracks began to show. Every argument, every harsh word, every sign of control chipped away at the foundation she had hoped to build. Her relationship with Jha'kari wasn't just strained, it had become toxic, with manipulation and moments of volatility creeping into their interactions. Still, Mya clung to the hope that things could change. She didn't want to give up. She wanted to believe that this was just a rough patch, that the love they shared could somehow pull them through the storm. If you could see one thing change in a toxic relationship, what would it be? Do you think love can sometimes blind us to the reality of what we're dealing with? But Mya's dreams for her future, her aspirations of going back to school, of creating a better life for her children, were overshadowed by the growing realization that the life she had envisioned for herself and her children was slipping through her fingers. The tension in her relationship reached its peak in those final moments, when everything they had been through led to a heartbreaking and irreversible tragedy. The layers of emotional pain and unresolved conflict came to a head, and the consequences were devastating. How many people like Mya do you think go through this every day, where they feel they have no other choice but to hold on and hope for a better tomorrow? Her life was more than just a tragic story of a woman caught in a toxic relationship. It was a story of a mother who worked tirelessly to create a future for her children, a woman who believed in second chances, and someone who hoped that love would be enough to fix everything. Mya's life, full of dreams and determination, was cut short, leaving behind the children she loved and the family who will forever wonder if there was more they could have done to help her escape the storm. What do you think could have been done to help Mya? Would you have noticed the signs earlier? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Also, click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more interesting stories. It all started like any other evening, but this one would end in tragedy. On October 22nd, 2024, Mya Johnson, a 26-year-old mother of 2 young children, was at home with her boyfriend, Jha'kari Martin-Sugrin. But that evening, the quiet in their home was shattered by a seemingly trivial disagreement, one that would escalate into something no one could have anticipated. Mya had discovered something on Jha'kari's social media. He had liked another woman's photo. A small action, one that might seem insignificant to an outsider, but to Mya, it was the spark that ignited a growing fire of distrust in their already strained relationship. The cracks in their bond had been widening for a while, and this one moment seemed to be the breaking point. Mya confronted Jha'kari, and what started as a simple conversation quickly spiraled into a fierce argument. Words were thrown like daggers, and the tension in the room grew unbearable. What followed next is a tragic reminder of how quickly things can escalate when emotions run high. Jha'kari, perhaps feeling cornered, decided to leave. He began packing his belongings, but instead of walking out quietly, he took something with him: Mya's phone. The phone, in many ways, was a symbol of the control and power dynamics that had been growing in their relationship. Mya had trusted him, but now, in the heat of the moment, she felt betrayed again. Accusations flew. Mya accused him of trying to manipulate her, to control her, and the fire only grew hotter. The argument became more heated, and Mya, in a moment of frustration and desperation, began to throw things at him. She was desperate for answers, for some kind of clarity in a relationship that had left her confused and hurting. But instead of backing down, Jha'kari continued to escalate the situation. In a moment that would change everything, Jha'kari grabbed a firearm and tucked it under his arm as he moved through the kitchen. The presence of the gun, a decision that would haunt him forever, added an undeniable weight to the already volatile situation. Mya, no stranger to conflict in their home, confronted him once more. This time, however, the confrontation would take a deadly turn. In the chaos that followed, the gun discharged. A single shot that would end Mya's life, and with it, the future she had so carefully dreamed of. The once promising mother of 2, with a child on the way, was gone. Her life cut short in an instant, leaving behind her 2 young children, and an unborn child that would never have the chance to meet her. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think there were signs leading up to this tragic event that could have been recognized sooner? How do you think Mya's story could have been different if she had been able to escape the cycle of conflict and manipulation? Let us know your thoughts. The frantic 911 call echoed through the night, breaking the silence of an already tragic evening. Jha'kari Martin-Sugrin, shaken and desperate, dialed for help, his voice filled with panic as he pleaded for assistance. I didn't mean to, he exclaimed, rushing to get Mya Johnson, the woman he had just shot, to the hospital. His voice cracked, trying to explain that the shooting had been a tragic accident. But the lifeless body of Mya, with a bullet wound that would end her life and the life of her unborn child, told a different story. The first responders arrived at the scene quickly, their training kicking in as they tried to piece together the fragments of what had happened. Jha'kari, still visibly shaken, continued to insist that the shooting was an accident. He claimed the gun had gone off during a struggle, during a heated argument between the two. But as they questioned him further, the details didn't add up. The inconsistencies in his account began to raise serious questions. How could such an accident happen in the midst of what he described as a chaotic altercation? And why had the gun been left in such a dangerous state, fully loaded and with the safety off? His story, already hard to believe, became even more suspect with each new detail the investigators uncovered. Forensics revealed even more troubling information. The trajectory of the bullet did not match the position Jha'kari had claimed the gun was in when it discharged. Everything seemed to point to the idea that this wasn't a simple accident. If it had been an accident, why was the gun handled in such a reckless manner? Why had Jha'kari felt the need to grab a weapon during a verbal altercation with Mya, a pregnant woman who had 2 young children? The presence of the firearm in that moment alone seemed like an alarming choice. As investigators continued to dig deeper, they interviewed Mya's 2 young children. The raw simplicity of their words sent shockwaves through the investigation. Mommy and Jha'kari were fighting. Then he shot her. In that short statement, these innocent witnesses had laid bare the painful truth. It wasn't just a tragic accident. It was the result of an escalating confrontation, one that had spiraled into an irreversible moment of violence. What was supposed to be a routine investigation into a domestic dispute was now becoming a much darker tale. The children's testimony, combined with the damning forensic evidence, painted a far different picture than Jha'kari's frantic 911 call had suggested. Could it be that Jha'kari was lying to cover up the truth? Was the shooting the result of a reckless act of violence, or was it something even darker, hidden behind a facade of regret? The doubts continued to mount, and with every new piece of evidence it became harder to believe that this had been a simple accident. The investigators had to face an unsettling question. Was Jha'kari responsible for this tragedy, or had the chaos and tension in their relationship finally pushed him to the edge? As the courtroom door slammed shut, the tension in the air could almost be felt by everyone in the room. The case that had captivated the community for weeks, the tragic shooting of Mya Johnson, was now entering its final stages. Jha'kari Martin-Sugrin, the 22-year-old boyfriend of the late Mya, sat at the defendant's table, his face a mix of regret and fear, waiting for the jury to decide his fate. It was a decision that would weigh heavily on the future of his life and, in many ways, the future of the family he had torn apart with one terrible decision. The prosecution wasted no time, launching straight into their argument. They described the tragic events of October 22nd, 2024, in painful detail. Mya, a mother of 2, 9 weeks pregnant with her 3rd child, shot in cold blood in her own kitchen. The reason? A fight over a simple yet deeply symbolic issue, a social media post, a picture liked by Jha'kari, another woman's image, and that moment had sparked a chain of events that escalated far beyond what anyone could have imagined. They argued that Jha'kari's actions were reckless, his choice to escalate a simple argument into an act of violence. The presence of the gun in their home, the loaded weapon tucked under his arm, was reckless in itself. The prosecution painted a picture of a man who had made an irresponsible decision to introduce a deadly weapon into an already tense situation. The gunshot that claimed Mya's life wasn't the result of an accident, they argued, but the tragic outcome of a relationship that had long been fraught with anger, control, and unresolved conflict. The defense, however, painted a very different picture. They stood firm in their claim that it was a tragic accident, a moment of panic and confusion. Jha'kari, they argued, never intended for this to happen. They described him as someone who was just trying to leave the home, packing his things, when things took an unexpected turn. The defense insisted that the gunshot was unintentional, that Jha'kari never meant to harm Mya. But the evidence told a different story. The inconsistencies in Jha'kari's account were hard to ignore. He claimed the gun had gone off during a struggle, but forensic evidence didn't line up with his description of events. Investigators had found that the gun was fully loaded, with the safety off. This raised troubling questions. Why was a loaded weapon so carelessly handled? And if this was truly an accident, how did the gun discharge so precisely, striking Mya at the perfect angle? As the trial progressed, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The jury listened closely, deliberating over whether Jha'kari's actions amounted to manslaughter or something far more deliberate. Was it reckless, as the prosecution argued, or was it a tragic mistake that could be forgiven? Jha'kari Martin-Sugrin was ultimately charged with 2 counts of manslaughter, one for Mya's death and one for the death of their unborn child. Prosecutors had struggled to prove intent, but the recklessness with which Jha'kari had handled the firearm led them to believe that his actions had been driven more by negligence than anything else. Without clear evidence of premeditation or malice, the charge of manslaughter was the most appropriate legal option. The decision to charge him with manslaughter, rather than murder, raised questions in the public eye. Was this justice? Could someone be held accountable for a tragic loss of life even without proving intent? Was a manslaughter charge enough? Or should Jha'kari have been held to a higher standard for the violence he had unleashed in their home? The community was left to grapple with the aftermath of this tragedy. Mya, once a devoted mother with a promising future ahead of her, was gone. 2 young children were left without a mother, and an unborn child would never get the chance to know the woman who had carried it. Jha'kari's actions had altered their lives in the blink of an eye, and the questions surrounding that night would linger for years to come. The story of Mya Johnson's death is one that underscores the devastating consequences of domestic violence and unchecked anger. In the heat of a moment, what was once a relationship filled with hope turned into something far darker. What could have been done to prevent this? Could someone have stepped in earlier to recognize the warning signs of a relationship spiraling out of control? And, perhaps most importantly, what responsibility does each of us have in recognizing and stopping these patterns before they end in tragedy? Mya's story is one of loss and heartbreak, but it is also one of lessons we must learn. We must learn to see the signs of escalating violence and not ignore them. We must take a stand against domestic abuse and protect the vulnerable before it's too late. Do you think Jha'kari's actions were the result of a tragic accident? Or do you believe there was something more deliberate behind the violence? How do you think the system should have handled this case? Let us know your thoughts. If you are finding this story impactful and want to stay informed about cases like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel. By hitting the notification bell, you'll never miss a new video that dives deep into real-life stories and the lessons we can learn from them. Your support helps us keep these important discussions going and raise awareness about domestic violence. As the defense and prosecution presented their closing arguments, the questions in the air became more than just legal. This was a case that held deep emotional weight for everyone involved. How do you hold someone accountable when the lines between accident and intent blur? Can a single moment of anger, of panic, of misplaced fear justify the taking of a life? And how does a community come to terms with the tragedy, knowing that the emotional scars will linger far beyond the verdict? The case not only impacted those directly involved, it reverberated throughout the community. Tallahassee, already grappling with the deep, painful realities of domestic violence, now faced a harsh reckoning. Mya's death was not an isolated incident. It was a part of a larger, disturbing trend, a cycle of abuse, control, and violence that too many people in the community had seen up close but failed to address until it was too late. If you've been impacted by this story, or if you know someone who is going through similar struggles, take a moment to reflect on the importance of intervention. Share this video. And remember, no one should suffer in silence. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Your support will help us continue bringing these important stories to light. Behind the walls of countless homes, a silent epidemic continues to unfold, unseen by many but felt deeply by those who live it every day. The tragic death of Mya Johnson is a painful reminder of the devastating reality of domestic violence. It's a reminder that the danger isn't always obvious and the scars aren't always visible. Mya's story isn't just one of loss, it's a call to action, a call for change in how we view, address, and prevent domestic violence. Every day, millions of people suffer in silence, their pain hidden behind the closed doors of their homes. 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime, a staggering statistic that reflects the overwhelming magnitude of this issue. And yet, too many victims suffer in silence, isolated and too often without the help they need. Domestic violence doesn't just leave physical wounds, it leaves invisible scars that can last a lifetime. Victims struggle with depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress, unable to escape the cycle of fear and manipulation. Mya Johnson was one of these victims. Her life, full of promise and potential, was stolen in an instant. But her death doesn't just mark the end of her story, it's a wake-up call to all of us. We cannot ignore the signs of abuse any longer. We cannot turn a blind eye to the devastating effects of control, manipulation, and violence in relationships. Mya's death demands that we take action, not just to mourn her loss, but to prevent the same tragedy from happening to others. What do you think is the first step in breaking the cycle of domestic violence? Do you think there's enough awareness about this issue in your community? Imagine being in a relationship where every word, every action is scrutinized. Imagine being trapped in a cycle of tension and fear, unable to escape. For Mya, this was her reality. And it's the reality for countless others who live in relationships marked by control and abuse. It's easy to overlook the signs, to think that it's not our problem, or to believe that it's not as bad as it seems. But the truth is, domestic violence is all around us, affecting millions of men and women, children and families, every single day. Have you ever witnessed signs of domestic violence in someone close to you? How did you respond? What do you think we can do to help others recognize these signs earlier? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, know this: help is available. You are not alone. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is here to offer support, help you create a safety plan, and connect you with resources that can help you break free from the cycle of abuse. They are available 24/7 at 1-800-079-972-33, and their services are confidential. But awareness is only the first step. The real change comes when we as a society choose to act. When we stop letting domestic violence hide in the shadows. When we listen to those who are suffering, offer them our support, and make sure that no one is left to fight alone. It's time to speak out, to raise our voices in support of those who need us, and to demand accountability for those who perpetuate violence in the Joanne. Do you think people in abusive relationships hesitate to speak up because they feel ashamed or because they fear not being believed? How can we make it easier for people to reach out for help? Mya's story, though tragic, is a powerful reminder that we must take action before it's too late. Her death highlights the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse, emotional manipulation, physical violence, controlling behaviors, and taking steps to help those who are trapped. It's not enough to wait for the worst to happen. We must act now before another life is lost. What can we do as a community to make sure we are taking action before it's too late? Have you ever been in a situation where you wish you had stepped in sooner to help someone? Her legacy, if we choose to honor it, is a call to all of us to be better, to not look away when we see the signs, to reach out, offer support, and demand that those who hurt others are held accountable. Domestic violence doesn't have to be a silent epidemic. It can be stopped. It starts with us. As we come to the end of this heart-wrenching story, we can't help but be left with one overwhelming question. Was this truly an accident, as Jha'kari Martin-Sugrin insists, or is there more to the story? Do you believe Jha'kari's version of events, or do you think the evidence points to something more deliberate? Was this manslaughter, or was it murder? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story has impacted you, if you felt the weight of it, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on the notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay up to date with all of our latest true crime stories that demand attention and spark important conversations about justice, accountability, and change. Together we can help ensure that stories like Mya's are never forgotten, and that we do everything we can to raise awareness, fight against domestic violence, and prevent the same tragedy from happening to others.